Good.
Perfect. All right. Well, here at the Cotton Research and Promotion Program, we are essentially made up of two different entities. Here at the Cotton Board, you've heard from our staff. We are the group that collects that per bale upland assessment on all cotton that is ginned in the United States. We administer the program. And then we get to communicate with stakeholders back what the program is doing with their funds. We contract with Cotton Incorporated to actually carry out the program. So you're going to hear from those researchers here in just a minute about some of the things they're doing with your state support and core funding dollars. They conduct that on farm, in lab, in mill research. They also promote cotton to consumers. So the marketing that you see on television, on internet ad space that is directed to consumers is what's carried out through that Cotton Incorporated office. We also like to say that they're the ones that are actually creating the demand and the profitability for cotton. That's in their mission statement. And then also at the Research and Promotion Program, we have USDA oversight. They actually govern the program. So all of the research and marketing that we put out has to be approved and vetted through the USDA and meet their standards. So like I mentioned, we collect a per bale assessment on all the upland cotton ginned in the United States. We also collect an importer assessment. So this is going to be on the cotton contents of imported goods back into the United States. What's really exciting about this for you guys as growers is that it gives you a partner in the program. These importers are from mills, manufacturers, brands, retailers from all across the country, and they're the ones that are actually using your cotton, using your product in goods they're selling to the consumer. The numbers here on the screen are our 5-year average. Our producer assessment makes up about 54% of the assessments collected. Our importers are about 46%. Thanks to a wonderful compliance department at the Cotton Incorporated, we're really proud to have an over 99% compliance rate. And because of that great compliance, we're able to fund Cotton Incorporated at such a high fiduciary level. For 2022, we have approved a Cotton Incorporated budget for $82 million. Every August, the Cotton Board and Cotton Incorporated Board meet to set key strategy areas and the budget for the next year. We're really excited about this 2022 budget because it's been an increase from the last 2 years. No surprise, I'm sure, to anyone on the call. The last 2 years on farm, economically and socially, we've had a little bit of a decrease in our budget, but 2022, we are able to increase that budget back to Cotton Incorporated at $82 million, which allows them to really carry out some really great marketing and some really great research on your behalf. What we're here to talk about today is the State Support Research Program. What's really neat about the funds that we collect and we pass on to Cotton Incorporated is they allocate 7.5% of all assessments to go towards localized research projects in your state. Those allocations to each state are based on production. So higher cotton producing states have a higher state support research budget. But what's exciting about these is that these funds are governed and determined and allocated based on a committee, a board in each state of producers, researchers, organizations, certified producer organizations that get to determine what research projects to fund in your state based on what might be a new issue, a new threat, something that's relevant to you. So not all of our research dollars, are based out of one state, or not all of our research projects are focused on one area, but we do have funds that are relevant to each state, to each area, to each region. And then, of course, these research projects in the state support are managed by a Cotton Incorporated research staff member. We're going to hear from a couple of different Cotton Incorporated staff members here in just a second about some different projects that we're funding out in the West with your research dollars. I do just want to highlight some committee members that we have. A few of you are on the call, and I know a few couldn't make it. But like I mentioned, each state support committee in each state is made up of producers, of organizations, of extension and research. individuals. So these are the board members in your states on the Cotton Board and on Cotton Incorporated. And these are voting members on your state support committee. You guys have wonderful representation across all 3 West states, different regions, different areas. Hopefully you know a few names here on the screen, but we're really excited to have these state support committee members on our board and to give you guys a voice in the research and promotion program. So that is my brief overview for the Cotton Board and Cotton Incorporated. Hopefully that was a review for many of you. Hopefully you're familiar with what we do at the research and promotion program. Before I hand it over to our Cotton Incorporated staff, I know we have a few research individuals on the call that I want to highlight. On this call, we're going to kind of focus on one particular research area on cottonseed quality, planting seed, and what kind of marketing and researches we're doing with cottonseed and cottonseed oil. But I know that we have a few on the call. Bob Hutchmacher, did you make it? I just wanted you guys to get to know some of the researchers in your states that we're funding, and I wanted them to introduce themselves. If you have any comments you might want to make, I'd be happy for you to unmute and do that at this time. I don't think Bob has made it. Ian, are you on the call? Do you want to make any comments and introduce
I'm on the call.
Oh, great, Bob. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, no, and I'm happy to have Ian talk. Ian is the one who has the current, Cotton Incorporated projects and all. We've in the past have had support for upland variety trials continuing, and have really appreciated that support, as well as some of the FOV work. But I think Ian can talk about his particular ongoing projects with Cotton Incorporated.
Okay.
Yeah. Ian, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself. Yeah.
Yes, my name is Ian Grettenberger. I'm an entomologist based out of UC Davis. I work in cotton. I actually cover field and vegetable crops, so pretty wide breadth. But yeah, my cotton work primarily, it's looking at developing management tactics for arthropod pests in cotton. And so this work has focused on kind of the key pests that we tend to be dealing with, so lygus and aphids and whitefly, and primarily, testing different insecticides or insecticide programs, and evaluating new materials as they kind of come down the pipeline. And then also there's a component of resistance monitoring. So this was a project that I've continued from, this overall project was continued from my predecessor, Larry Godfrey. And a component of that has been resistance monitoring for lygus. So we've continued monitoring for insecticide resistance using some bioassays. So kind of a smaller component of this larger project. So yeah, a little short and sweet, but hopefully that works.
Yeah, thank you all so much for joining us out of California. Randy, are you with us? Do you want to unmute and introduce yourself and give us a little comments or highlights if you want to make them?
Sure, Christy. My name is Randy Norton. Good to be with you. Good morning, everyone. I work for the University of Arizona. I'm an extension agronomist with primarily responsibilities in cotton. And I run a cotton agronomic research program across the southern part of Arizona from Yuma to Safford. Last year we had about 52 individual research projects across the state. A lot of those are variety trials. We do a lot of variety testing, both advanced strains or experimental varieties and commercial varieties on farm. So we get to work with the awesome growers that we have here in Arizona. They allow us to be on their farms and test varieties with them in real world conditions, which is very valuable information to our growers. We're also involved in a lot of the Extension Cotton Specialist Working Group projects, the seed quality that you mentioned. I think Gaylon's probably going to be talking about that a little bit. We're one of the participating locations in that project. And then other projects that are funded through core funds through Cotton Incorporated. So we very much appreciate our relationship with Cotton Incorporated and their ability to help us carry out the research that we do here in Arizona. So thank you, and it's good to be with you.
Thanks, Randy. I appreciate it. And the last introduction I'm going to make, Jose Diaz is, I believe, pretty new to his role in research with Arizona. Jose, do you want to introduce yourself and any comments that you'd like to make?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, good morning, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure for me to be joining you guys. So my name is Jose Luis. I have recently joined the University of Arizona with the Department of Plant Science. My predecessor is Dr. Bill McCloskey. So I'm going to be the new extension weed scientist here with the University of Arizona. And that's right, I have just started. I'm still on my third week, but I'm looking for, I believe there are many challenges and opportunities for helping our growers increasing yields and profitability, looking at how can we better enhance our weed management, weed science, herbicide resistance, integrated weed management, looking at alternative ways of weed control. And even though I'm still on my third week here, I think that's probably, our friend Palmer Amran. It's one of our biggest threats for our cotton industry here. So I'm definitely excited and planning to do a lot of research and apply the extension in how can we better help our growers with weed management and avoiding herbicide resistance.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you guys so much for joining us this morning. We just wanted to take a minute to introduce you to some of those key researchers and specialists in your state. They are great partners with our staff at Cotton Incorporated. And so like I said, on this call, we're going to kind of take a specialized, a focused approach on what we present to you all this morning, the value of research that we have in your states on the different aspects of cottonseed. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Hake, the Vice President of Ag and Environmental Research at Cotton Incorporated, to get us started. Cater.
Thank you, Christy. Can you see my slides there?
We
Great.
can
Good.
just put them in presentation mode.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. There we go. Good, a little better. Christy, I really appreciate the Cotton Board's innovation and leadership on these outreach efforts. Just been phenomenal over the last 2 years. You've all done a wonderful job. And it really is helpful in freeing up our team, the research team, and the promotion team to do what we're supposed to do, which is research and promotion. So thank you for that. I'd like to very briefly cover just a little overview of what's going on in California and add to what Ian and Bob and Randy and Dr. Diaz mentioned. So we are a team of 7 research directors. We manage the state support program across the U.S. In blocks, and I'm currently handling the Far West. But I do want to introduce you to Susan Jaconis, Dr. Jaconis, or Evie, who you'll hear from right after me. She'll be taking on responsibilities for the 3 Western states. I'm also covering diseases because, as you know, we lost Bob Nichols in 2020, both through retirement and then he passed. But very fortunate, we will be bringing on a new plant pathologist and nematologist April 1 to take on that role. But you can see the team that we have a really strong team that manages the research efforts. So let me just share with you a real high level. I've got 2 slides. I crammed all of the core and state support projects on 2 slides. And I just want to tell you a little bit about that, because historically, these states have really led in a lot of just tremendous areas important to growers across the belt. And one area, obviously, is disease. So the way I've got this organized is I show both the core and state support. The state support have the state letters after the numbers, but right at the top, you can see there's a huge effort going on with Fusarium. Besides a little bit of Texas touching New Mexico, we're fortunate race 4 is in California, New Mexico, and Texas. So obviously we're putting a lot of effort into that to try to keep it, we'll address it if it does expand beyond those areas, but also to understand the pathogen better. Also, historically, these Western states have led in terms of IPM. In fact, IPM originally came out of Ian's area, the hard work that was done to address insects in the 70s has really led to a worldwide adoption of IPM. And so there's still a very, very strong program in entomology in these Western states that not only address local grower concerns, but also provide innovations that are valuable for a belt wide. And one example of that is right at the bottom. Arizona used to be the only area that had a virus threat, and unfortunately viruses have expanded across the US. We now have multiple viruses, but Dr. Brown has been leading the charge in terms of the viruses that threaten cotton out of Arizona. Actually, there are viruses from around the world, but her leadership comes out of Arizona. Randy mentioned the importance of variety testing in these Western states, and it goes beyond just meeting the immediate needs of growers there. This is an area that we see the genetic potential of varieties, because with irrigated and good climate, uniform soils, really get a glimpse of what a variety can do in terms of its potential. So there's quite a bit of effort looking at variety testing, but also breeding innovations that are being developed in that area as well. So it's a big region for germplasm development and evaluation. We also have a really robust team in terms of engineering, both the Gin Lab, but also agricultural engineering in Arizona. And so they're taking on the lead of not only addressing belt-wide issues such as contamination, but also trying to make cotton production more precise with regards to weed control, whether it's precision cultivation or planting and spraying, modeling of that crop. So Arizona really has a belt-wide, Arizona, California, New Mexico, a belt-wide impact beyond meeting the needs of the local growers. And with that, before I hand it over to Evie, let me just mention the online resources that are available for growers. If you want to see more details about all of the state support projects, we do have a link to that where it's on the web. But more importantly, the cotton cultivated outreach effort that we have led by Dr. Ryan Kurtz, that's available on the web as well. And with that, let me stop sharing and hand it over to Dr. Jaconis, who you'll get to know a lot better. She takes over state support for these Western states.
Thanks so much, Cater. And thanks everyone for having me today. It's nice to meet you all. Let me just share my presentation here. Alrighty, so as Cater mentioned, I'm Evie. I've recently joined Cotton Incorporated as one of the Ag and Environmental Research Directors. Since I'm new, I'm going to just share a little bit of my background with you all so you can get to know me a little bit. And then I'm going to go into my focus areas at Cotton Incorporated and then dive into some of the research we've been supporting, specifically with cottonseed and core funds. So this topic is relevant to the whole growing region and particularly in the Western states. So yeah, so just about me, I'm originally from North Carolina. I did my undergrad at NC State in plant biology. I've always loved plants and really enjoyed working with them. So I went on to earn my PhD at the University of Cincinnati. And while I was there, my focus was really on plant responses to stress. From there, I went over to Australia for a few years and did my postdoc research with the CSIRO, that's the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization for Australia, and worked with some really amazing cotton scientists. And again, there my research focused to stress, and that time really heat stress in cotton. After that, I came back to the US, and for the last few years, I was the director for all research programs with the national organization that represents peas, lentils, and chickpeas in the US and really their growers. So that was a good time, but I really wanted to get back into cotton. So I'm very excited to be here with Cotton Incorporated and working with you all. So in my role at Cotton Incorporated, I have three main topic areas. One's plant physiology and then plant nutrition, which fit well with my research background. And then I'm also looking at cottonseed nutrition, as my time with the USA Dry Pea and Lentil Council had a strong nutrition focus. So that's where my background in that area comes from. And today we're really going to focus on that cottonseed nutrition side. When I think about the cottonseed nutrition area, the focus is both on human and animal nutrition. And when we talk about the animal health, that's primarily going to be beef and dairy. So let's dive right into the dairy cattle. The use of cottonseed in dairy cow feeds has grown and expanded over time. Over the years, there's been a considerable amount of research conducted focusing on feeding cottonseed to dairy cows. And in my literature search, I've been finding research as early as the 1930s. So last year, the team here worked with Dr. Adam Locke and Dr. Jose dos Santos Neto from Michigan State University, and they performed a meta-analysis of previous research that's been done. In this meta-analysis, they reviewed 48 research publications that involved the feeding of cottonseed to dairy cows. And one of the main reasons to do this was to really help guide future research in this area. So they looked at outcomes based on incremental 1% increases in whole cottonseed in the diet for these dairy cows. The analysis revealed that there seems to be kind of this linear production response with increased cottonseed feeding. So in other words, as more cottonseed was fed to cows, there were positive production responses. So that's going to be outcomes including milk fat yield, energy corrected milk, and milk protein. They also saw some other trends like increased milk fat content, but also decreases in things like digestibility measurements. So given the low average milk production in the data set, because the cows didn't produce as much historically as they do today, these researchers suggest that future research should address the effect of increasing dietary whole cottonseed in high producing cows. So that's where it brings us now. We continue to work with these scientists as they conduct a dosage study. And in this, they're feeding several levels of whole cottonseed to see if we can document a positive production response with increasing levels of cottonseed in the ration. So these dose response studies are going to help us determine appropriate levels of whole cottonseed, which could potentially maximize milk production and increase the use of whole cottonseed in the dairy industry. So I'll shift a little bit to beef cattle side. Here we're working with Dr. Blake Wilson and Dr. Ryan Reuter from Oklahoma State University. They actually conducted some previous experiments at their university to determine the effects of including cotton byproducts in finishing feedlot diets on performance and carcass characteristics. And those results from that previous work suggested that whole cottonseed can be effectively used as a protein, fat, and fiber source in a finishing feedlot diet without compromising performance or carcass characteristics. So as a next step, what we're working with them now, they're investigating the cow-calf sector, and they're going to be comparing outcomes of whole cottonseed usage with traditional pelleted supplements. So they're looking at both of those treatments at 2 pounds, 4 pounds, and 6 pounds of each, and a true control. So they're going to analyze outcomes for performance, reproduction, some metabolites, as well as methane emissions, which is pretty important right now. So because this is kind of the early stage of the project, it's always interesting to mention challenges that pop up with research. I feel like there's always hurdles, right? So here's a photo that shows the smart feeder that they were working with to have controlled the feeding treatments, but they struggled with it. You can see there's kind of bridging of the whole cottonseed there. So they did a lot of troubleshooting, but they're now going to hand feed the cattle. So I'm excited because this team really seems dedicated, and no matter what challenge comes at them, they're going to try to produce results for us. So that's been interesting so far. So let's transition a little bit into human health. We're really starting to get into the human health research in regards to cottonseed oil. And this started several years ago with Dr. Jamie Cooper and Dr. Chad Payton at the University of Georgia. They've been able to show a reduction in cholesterol, triglycerides, and low density lipoproteins, along with an increase in the high density lipoproteins, which are considered good. When they compared a cottonseed oil diet, a diet that was heavy with cottonseed oil in healthy young males compared to olive oil. And so there were limitations to that research, but this really gave us some preliminary evidence that investigating cottonseed oil in human consumption would be important and a direction that we should look more into. So they actually continue to work in this space, and now they're expanding their clinical trials to at-risk individuals with high cholesterol. So with the outcomes of that preliminary research, we're aiming to broaden and diversify that body of cottonseed oil research. We want to really expand to more scientists and continue to develop a knowledge base. So I've been talking to Dr. Mary Miles, who's in the picture that you see on the right. She heads a human nutrition lab at Montana State University, and she's proposed to do a 28-day dose response study to elucidate the impacts of cottonseed oil on inflammation. And so this work is highly relevant to potential incorporation of cottonseed oil into the diet for reduction of inflammatory diseases such as cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. So I'm very excited to work with her in this area and see what she finds out. So the research department collaborates with our marketing division for a unified approach to cottonseed. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about that marketing strategy that they have. The company's cottonseed marketing efforts focus on the promotion of whole seed as a feed for dairy and beef cattle rations, and then on cottonseed oil for humans. While whole cottonseed has been a mainstay for the US dairy herds for decades, its benefits to beef cattle producers has only recently emerged as an additional opportunity. So both whole seed and oil promotions are aimed at nutritionists, ruminant nutritionists for whole seed, and then human nutritionists for that cottonseed oil side. They have secondary target audience for the whole seed, and that's going to be the dairy and beef producers, with food organizations and consumers as secondary target audiences for the oil promotion side. The company has also established advisory boards for the dairy and beef to help keep us updated on issues and concerns, as well as opportunities in those areas, and to contribute to the evolution of the marketing programs. And lastly, just to show you what the cottonseed marketing communications look like, on the far left, you see the print ad for dairy whole seed, and that appears in dairy industry publications. That's meant to be intentionally humorous, as well as the middle advertisement for beef with the tagline, beef up your bottom line. So right now there's no advertising for cottonseed oil. Instead, the team has a website that's used to educate food and food service industry individuals, as well as consumers. Right now, there's also no plans to advertise cottonseed oil. And that's partly due to budget, but also because of the limited availability of cottonseed oil in consumer-friendly containers. But the website is used as a destination for more information and promoted through direct communications with the food and food service industries. And so that's all I have for you. Just kind of a whole picture of the program that we've got with Cottonseed. And I'd just like to thank James Pruden, our Senior Director of Public Relations, for sharing those marketing slides with me. And yeah, any questions?
That was great. Thanks, Evie. Gaylon, I think we'll go ahead and turn it over to your segment.
Okay. Let's see here.
While he's pulling up his screen, I will mention if you guys want to drop any questions in the chat box, I'll be watching those for the end of the presentation. We'll also have a time where you can unmute and ask them. So just be thinking about questions if you want to drop them in there. So, all right, it's all yours, Gaylon. We can see that. Great.
All right, thanks, Christy. It's a pleasure to be here this morning and to visit with you all. I'm going to kind of follow on the same theme that Evie had on cottonseed, but focusing more on the planting seed quality. It's been a really big concern across the cotton belt for a lot of the growers. So we developed a belt-wide project, and Randy Norton's heavily involved in this project as well. You can see him in the list of authors there, but we basically was a 2-year project surveying growers' seed that is being sold to growers, and then looking at the different seed quality characteristics. So we'll kind of go through this fairly quickly, but be happy to answer any questions about it. And like I said, Randy can answer questions more specifically as well. So just kind of a little bit of background. You guys know the importance of seed quality, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but just basically some research going back to the early 90s showing the importance of seed quality and how it can directly affect cotton yields. Another really important thing here is to point out a lot of the research that's been done is at least 30+ years old. We know a lot of things have changed in both, cotton seed genetics, cotton seed size, and lots of other handling things have occurred. So we thought it was definitely time to go back and look at some of the work that had been done and to develop some new work to look at these latest varieties and seed quality. You guys know what you're paying for a bag of seed is definitely not cheap. And with that price, really everyone expects every one of those seeds to come up. So, and as I'd mentioned previously, it directly affects your bottom line as well. When you have poor stands, which could lead to replants, we know that replanting is much more expensive than it was even 5 years ago due to some of the programs that the companies don't support as much anymore. But overall, it just lead to lower profits. So this is kind of what we did for this belt-wide project. There were 2 main objectives. Over this 2-year project, I would say we probably did the best job on the first one, which is basically conducting a survey across the U.S. cotton belt. So all the locations, there were about 15 locations across the cotton belt that are listed there on the right, where they basically collected seed from bags of seed that growers had purchased. And then we ran this long list of seed quality characteristics there, such as the lab data, but then the collaborators like Randy Norton collected a lot of field data as well, including stand counts, seedling fresh weight, and then looking at the maturity of that crop, and then ultimately a yield. This is a very busy slide, but I just want to say, we had a diversity of different varieties included in here. All the companies were represented. And again, it was 15+ locations across the cotton belt. So this gets into kind of the survey. These are just the 2021 12-day germ results that were run at North Carolina State University. All the seed samples were run at the same location at North Carolina Department of Ag. And you can see the states are listed there on the bottom of the graphic. and then the warm germ listed on the y-axis there, the vertical axis. And the dotted line there is at 80%. That's just kind of the standard, the minimum standard we would like to see in our commercially available seed. But you can see there were quite a few samples there, some states worse than others, where we definitely had seed quality that was, down into that 70 or below range that were commercially being sold, to growers. So, and the results from 2020 kind of fall in line with this as well. Moving over to the cool germination, slide is set up exactly the same. You can see the mean, minimum, and average there on your right side. The red dotted line there indicates we would hope that the seed cool germ would be at least 50%. But you can see that from at least some of the samples, we were down into the 20s range and as low as 14% cool germ on a commercially sold bag of seed. Obviously, the vast majority of those, were quite good quality seed, but we do have those kind of outliers out there. And again, a small percent, but if that was the seed lot or the bags of seed that you purchased on your farm, that could be a really big issue. And Murillo Maeda kind of led this effort. He's at Lubbock, Texas, and he put this graphic together here, looking at warm germ and cool germ. And the kind of important thing is, and it's kind of laid out here, basically as your cool germ goes up, your warm germ, things really narrow down. So kind of the take home message here, I'll just lay this out. Basically, when you have good cool germ, you're nearly guaranteed to also have really good warm germ. So you can see kind of in the right two columns there, they came up, all those samples that had really good cool germ also had really good warm germ. On the flip side, that just because you have really good warm germ doesn't mean that you're going to have good cool germ. So it is, it's kind of a simple way to kind of think of this and kind of summarize the vast data that was available for this project. So anyway, ideally, we'd probably be looking for cool germs greater than 70%. That would then ensure we also got really good warm germs. This goes back to kind of that second slide where I showed when you have lower quality seed produces lower yields. So this is the yield response. And as you look at basically how quickly or what percent of the stand you have at 7 days after planting. So generally speaking, those that had the best stands at 7 days after planting, those equated to higher yield potential. So just kind of reinforcing some of the historical data that seed quality does definitely equate to higher yields. There's tons of data within this study. So this is just kind of a summary showing what ultimately we would like to be able to do from these results is use the lab data that was collected from oil germination and then be able to better predict stand establishment in the field. The warm germination test, as you're all very familiar with, is actually a pretty low bar for germination, and in many cases may very poorly correlate to stand establishment in the field. So we're hoping, pulling all these parameters that we collected, that we would have a better predictor of stand establishment in the field, that you could take this information, maybe it's warm germ plus cool germ plus oil content, and you would have a much better idea of what you could expect to actually come up in your field when you plant it. So that's the ultimate goal of this. Kind of a second component of this was looking at the visual mechanical damage. This research was conducted by Lori Snyder at North Carolina State University. You guys and ladies have all opened a bag of seed, and you see tons of damaged seed in the top of that bag of seed. So we kind of wanted to dive into that and see what impact that ultimately had on stand establishment ultimately. But a lot of this work that Lori's Snyder has done, let's see, for some reason my slides quit advancing. lot of the work that Lori has done, really, if you look back in the literature, all of it was done in the 60s and 70s. And then I've highlighted here in the mid 1980s, that was actually a summary of what had been done in the 60s and 70s. So Lori's kind of updating this. Obviously, a lot of things have changed in the way, harvesting's done, ginning's done, and the capability of sorting out also some of this visual mechanical damage seed. On the left is a publication from the 1960s. What Lori's done is gone back in and, taken some really high resolution imagery, and is going to allow us to update kind of some of the visual information that's out there on visual mechanical damage. She has really close-ups of many of these as well. So this is kind of ongoing. Hopefully a publication is going to be out on this shortly. This may not affect you guys directly in what you would see in a bag of seed, but it will help train people as in the labs when they may be looking for visual mechanical damage and quantifying that visual mechanical damage. This is just kind of some of the many things that Lori had accomplished. And basically she took these high resolution seeds, pictures of the seeds, she put them in a germination process and followed them through the germination process. And then in addition to whether it passed that warm germination category, which is just 4 centimeters from the end of the radicle to the top of the shoot, which, that's a little, it's about 1.25 inches. It's not long. She also categorized these as strong, weak, or abnormal, which is also going to probably be a much closer correlated to what you would see in the field. Again, just some close-ups of some of the things that she's taken following these through the process. You can see up here, there's very damaged seed. And basically she takes pictures of these as it goes through and shows you kind of what the end result would be. Here's a damaged seed example, and you can see some of the early germination process, and then ultimately what that seedling looked like after 12 days. So a lot of really good imagery here that, we'll be able to use moving forward for showing what's happening to some of this damaged seed. And this just feeds into the next slide I'm going to show you. So on the left side would what would be considered a strong seedling. The middle is the weak seedlings. Although these would pass a normal warm germination test, you can see that they are much weaker than the ones that are on the left. And then here you have the abnormal seedlings. And depending on the judgment of the individual doing that germination test, depends on where this would fall and whether it would pass the germination procedure or not. So this is ultimately probably what you have the most interest in, from that very damaged seed or damaged seed that you see in a bag of seed. When you open it, this is some of the very damaged seed. And Lori has broken it out as to what is the end result of that very damaged seed. So basically you're looking at 44% of that is essentially dead seed. Then you have another, nearly 30% that would be considered in that weak category. And then you can see some of the other ones, less than 4 centimeters, dead, and then some of the other categories, but only about 11% of those actually resulted in what would be a strong seedling. And this very damaged category, from our conversations with the companies, this is basically all they're looking at is the very damaged seed. And Lori went, of course, the next category was just damaged seed. And this is what that damaged seed, and here's an example up here on the right. You can see it's got indentions here. You don't see any cracks or you don't see any holes in it, but you can see kind of the just malformation of it. She called that a damaged seed. And this is what that equated to after it went through the germination process. You had about 15% of that turned into a strong seedling, about 45% that was weak, and about 33% that was dead. So a very high percent of the seed that many of us may not think as, would be considered damaged. Actually, when looking at it under a microscope, you do see a lot more damage to these seedlings. And this is what you would kind of expect. And of course, a lot of these weak seedlings, as we showed in the previous pictures, probably in a lot of situations, those are never going to actually emerge. And of course, the dead ones will not either. I will say through this process, the companies have been cooperative. You know, they have provided feedback. We've had meetings with them, working closely with them to hopefully, like rising tides floats all boats kind of situation, bringing this information to them, because ultimately they're the one that's going to have to improve the process. So we've been working closely with the companies and being as transparent as possible with them as well. And with that, here's just a list of the different universities that are cooperating, again, those in some of the Western states as well. So with that, I will be happy to take any questions at this point in time.